Hi everyone, it's Wuju Senchi here. I'm coming at you. Or, no, that's not how I want to start it. Hi everyone, this is Wuju Senchi here. This is one of the first videos I'm putting out, or this should be the second video now I'm putting out since my channel's kind of got with this editor going. We have this higher level, higher quality content we're putting out now. So I thought I'd take this chance to just briefly introduce myself for people who might be coming to the channel for the first time. Let y'all know a little bit about kind of some of the things that I do for the community and things that you might also want to, resources that you might want to take advantage of. My name is Wuju Senchi, although my real name is Arthur. I'm a medical student in Los Angeles. I'm half Jewish, half Japanese. So I speak a little bit of Japanese. I've been League of Legends streamer, been playing since season 4. Been a Master Yi Jantrax since like season 5 or 6. And peak rank was 800 LP, or it was technically like 790 LP, but yeah, about 800 LP, and that was beginning of season 13. Season 13 sees split 1. One of the things that people in the Yi community kind of know me for, one of them is I would, on an annual basis, I would put together these Yi podcasts, and that would be like basically like a 4, 5, 6 hour long stream that I'd post on YouTube, and it'd be a stream involving a lot of the high elo Master Yi mains, such as, Scenarius, Calcep, other big names in the past and newer names, things like that. We would get us all together and talk about Master Yi related things. I did not do a Master Yi seminar this year. Maybe not. We'll bring it back. We'll see. Kind of depends because school keeps me kind of busy, which some of you may already know about, some of you might not. But I put together these build guides. There should be a link down in the description below, and they're in the description of all my YouTube videos, all the recent ones at least. And it's something I like. I originally just started just because I wanted one for myself, because I'm really into Master Yi build theory crafting and stuff, and I just wanted a spreadsheet to organize my own thoughts around what builds are good. And even as I continue to play solo queue and look up other hear about other Master Yi players and their builds and stuff, just I'm constantly gathering information. I constantly want to organize in my head what do I think are the actual best builds, and what are combos that could work in certain situations, and just trying to have all of that organized in a nice Google document. I use a spreadsheet, is really nice just for my own climbing, and I feel like it's something that can be helpful to the community. So I've always, for the past couple of years, I've put this thing together and I've shared it, made it free for anyone to access. And usually if I'm playing actively and try hard climbing, I'm probably updating the build guide once every couple days, at least once or a couple times a week. So I'm updating it pretty frequently, and it's based on both the builds that I personally like the best, as well as builds that I've seen other Yi mains finding success with. So if that's something you're interested in, you can check it out. Here, let me pull it up on the stream here / YouTube video, so y'all can see. This is what it looks like. There's 2 tabs. One is Wuju's builds. That's builds that these are the builds that I personally like the most right now. But here's the actual build guide. These are the builds that I think are the best. Y'all may have recently seen that Scenarius posted this YouTube video, and me and him were talking about the crit build for Yi, something that is, it surfaced somewhat recently. Crit on wasn't a build many Yi mains were running for, a while, but I think it's definitely, it's more on the map right now just because of, the current patch. LDR is a really disgusting item, and crit in general is just a strong, the crit items in general are strong, and that's what I think what makes crit Yi such a noteworthy build right now. So here's the build. I think you should take Hail Blades, and I think you should take Flash. So Hail Blades, I guess I'll explain these choices briefly. So Hail Blades, crit is all about burst. Hail Blades fits that perfectly. You don't really need Dark Harvest and PTA or Conquer, things like that. It's not going to increase your burst as much as Hail Blades will. So hopefully that's self-explanatory. Flash also I think is really important. It's just generally I think the best rune or summoner spell you can take on Yi, but for crit build especially important because you're playing an assassin, and assassins need to be able to have explosive attacks. If you're trying to assassinate an AD carry in a late game team fight, you want to be able to do things in such a way that it's hard for them to react. So if you run at them with Ghost versus if you flash on top of them in Q, it's harder to react to when you flash on top of them in Q versus Ghost running at them. And same thing with Ignite. It gives you more damage, but you want to be explosive, especially with the crit build. Flash, Hail Blades, both I think are very important. Bork is the first item. Right now, the way it is for Yi is before items were changed in season 14, Bork was already pretty much it was hard to top Bork as the best first item. Bork only got stronger yeah, other items are just basically, I don't think any item really compares to Bork in terms of a first item rush. As far as of me making this video, I can't think of another item that really holds a candle to Bork in terms of strength. You know, Titanic Rush first item was something that previously I thought like could actually be kind of good in some situations, but then after Bork got buffed, yeah, Bork Rush, you just want to start with that with any build, basically including crit. So you start with Bork. And then the second item's LDR. This is where it starts to become a crit build and where people start to like raise their eyebrows like, why are we building LDR second? Shouldn't you build at like third or fourth? Why don't we get Infinity Edge? Let me explain. You want to get LDR second because one, this is a broken busted item right now. But even if they nerf it, which I wouldn't be surprised if they nerf it a little bit, the way that LDR works as a second item rush is that it really complements Bork as a first item. Yi is one of the best Bork appliers in the game, and if Yi's damage is so dependent on Bork, and you have LDR giving 40% armor penetration, which increases all of Bork's damage, you know, the AD, the on-hit passive, which increases your Q damage and autos, like everything about Yi's damage is so dependent on how much damage you can deal with Bork, and LDR will increase all of that. Master Yi's E damage has been nerfed. Having like a lot of attack speed to apply a lot of true damage on hits through your E is not as important as it used to be, but if you have LDR, you're like already doing close to true damage through just the physical damage that you output. I don't know if I explained that in a way that makes sense, but basically LDR second, it's a really powerful second item spike that segues very nicely into the crit build, and it's one of the reasons, like one of the main reasons for that is just because it gives you so much armor penetration that really makes your Bork damage, like it puts it on crack. It's just really, really high damage from your Bork and your Q and everything. And after LDR, IE, a third item gives you 50% crit, and then if you're autoing 2 to 3 times, you're definitely going to get like 1 crit in there, if not 2 or 3. It becomes a very, very strong item spike at 3 items, LDR and IE with after Bork. After IE, this is where people have different opinions. I personally really like PD fourth. There's another NAE main, Munchie. He likes Death's Dance fourth, although maybe he's changed his opinion since making this video, but he was telling me he likes Death's Dance, and I know some other people like BT. You know, Shield Bow is something you could potentially do. I don't really like it, honestly. I think Shield Bow is one of the worst items in the game, but technically, you know, it could work as a fourth item. Yuntal, I don't recommend it, but technically, I think Calsip runs that sometimes. You know, Collector and Untitled both are items you could potentially go for. I just don't really recommend them. They're not the best. I'll just say that. I don't think they're the best items you could get. But generally, I think you want to try and get some kind of a crit item fourth. You want to keep spiking your damage basically after IE. Getting extra crit is going to really blow up your damage a lot by getting more crits in there. You want to really milk your IE damage and make sure you get as many crits as possible. So a crit items I think is pretty important, but yeah, technically BT works, just gives you a lot of AD. It's a good item. Death Dance also is just a good item for Yi, and so you could, you know, those technically work. I really like PD fourth, and the reason for that is because it's like a really cheap item that gives 60% attack speed and 12% movement speed. Oh, another thing I should have mentioned is that with this crit build, you're not required to get tier 2 boots. You could just get tier 1 boots and sit on that for the whole game. You can even never finish tier 2 boots, or you can finish tier 2 boots, you know, at a later point in time. Like, you know, ideally you would not finish it until maybe after your second or third item. And when you do finish your boots, you can get Berserkers if you want. You can also get Tabs or Mercs. I actually tend to get Tabs or Mercs more often. But yeah, because you get PD, or at least I get PD fourth, and it gives you 12% movement speed, it really makes having tier 2 boots like you don't need it at all. You get tons of movement speed from PD. It actually gives you more movement speed than tier 2 boots would. Getting PD fourth not only gives you like basically the movement speed of boots, but also that 6% attack speed, which when you have already this much AD, you already do a ton of burst damage, okay, especially with Hail Blades. If you think of a graph in terms of like, this is damage and this is attack speed. Yeah, if this is AD and this is attack speed, and you want to keep the slope as like, you want to have it pointing as close to the like top left corner as possible. I'm not sure if that's the best way to explain it. So basically, if you get so much AD, you lose some return on investment. Whereas if you get a nice balance of AD and attack speed, your DPS will be maxed out by having a nice balance of the two. That's why, like, when I get PD fourth, and you can probably test this as a practice tool yourself and see how the DPS compares, but if you get an AD item fourth versus an attack speed item fourth, I think your DPS is going to be higher with an attack speed item fourth, because you already have 3 AD items. Bork gives a little bit of attack speed, but basically they're all AD items primarily. So getting PD fourth is just really nice for attack speed, increasing your DPS. One-shot potential is still, even though it's not an AD item, the attack speed makes it so that you're basically getting a whole extra auto or two in your combo, right? That's how much faster you're putting out damage. So it's almost it basically, I think, is what is going to maximize your DPS the most, your one-shot potential the most. The attack speed, as well as the movement speed, is just really nice. So that's how I really like PD, and then I like to get Navori afterwards. And it's the same idea, you know, we have all these AD items, and if you get an attack speed item and another attack speed item on top of that, you've really maxed out your DPS in terms of this curve being right in the middle between attack speed and attack damage. And I really feel the spike with the Navori. So PD and Navori both give a movement speed, so together they give you 90% movement speed, which is a ton. Again, you really do not need boots in this build, especially once you have these two items. You're plenty fast, and together they're giving you 100% attack speed, 40% from Navori. You just become like this demon, like crit demon god, like monster thing with these 5 items. You're at 100% crit, and you have a ton of movement speed, a ton of attack speed. Navori, like, is a very, you might think, like, isn't it just overkill at this point to get like another crit item with more attack speed? We already have PD giving us attack speed, and like it doesn't feel like redundant, it doesn't seem redundant. I'm gonna say no. I really feel the spike when I build Navori, because that passive, you really feel like your Q, W, E are all being reset so quickly. You can have permanent E, Q, and W in the jungle, and when you're fighting objectives like Dragon, Baron, things like that. And when you're fighting tanks, you know, sometimes you might not always be able to go in on a squishy target first, but with Navori you can very easily reset your abilities. Like, it's just, you feel it. That's what I'll say. From my experience, I really feel the strength of Navori 5th. So these are just my preferences. By the way, LDR as a second item, even though I really think you should get LDR second no matter what with this build. You know, there is an argument to be made for getting Mortar Reminder instead. If the enemy has a lot of healing, then you definitely want someone on your team to have Grievous Wounds, and if no one else on your team is going to get it, you know, you're trolling if you don't get it and no one else is going to get it, right? Because you lose 5 AD, 5% armor penetration, but you get Grievous Wounds, and if the enemy team has a lot of healing, that's 100% worth it. In my games, I never build Mortar Reminder. I just beg my team to get Grievous Wounds, and usually someone buys it. You know, I think it's a really, if it's a game where like no one on your team, all 4 of your teammates are not willing to get Grievous Wounds, it's a tough game to begin with if your teammates are that uncooperative, you know what I mean? So usually I ask my teammates to get it. It's up to you. If you feel like, okay, no one else on my team is going to get Grievous Wounds, the enemy team has like a bunch of healing, Soraka, Olaf, etc. Yeah, of course you need to get it. But I always feel like I miss LDR so much. If I were to get Mortar Reminder instead, I feel the difference. So I just always build LDR second. Period, when I'm going crit build. So that's my preference on how you do crit, and I tried to explain as best I can the logic behind why the build order is the way it is and why it's strong now. I guess I could clarify a little bit more about why it's strong now, and I talked about this in the scenarios video, but basically all the items were buffed, and just in general these items are all in a great spot, and some of them are just flat out busted like LDR in the current patch. I think PD and Navori are also kind of sleeper because of just like they're super cheap and very loaded with stats. This is a playstyle that I feel like is straight up OP right now, so I put it on my build doc here as the top category, OP. And here in the kind of right half of the spreadsheet is where I kind of add notes about these builds, possible second item choices besides LDR. I rank them here from best to worst. So best here is LDR, which you see on your screen. Mortar Reminder is the second option for your second item. Like I said, you know, you can get Mortar Reminders to LDR if you really feel like you need to. IE as a second item is also technically possible, but like I haven't really tested many of these like second item purchases that much. I really don't think you should do them unless you, for whatever reason, really feel like you need to or you just really want to. But I think by far the strongest second item purchase you can get is either LDR or Mortal. That's how the build document works. Whenever it says second item, then you'll see, you know, from best to worst, the items that I think could work as a second item. These swords here with the arrow pointing up, that means items that'll increase your damage. So I also ranked these in order of what I think are the best damage items you could get that aren't already in the build. Besides these 5 items, what are other items that would, I think, increase your damage in the crit build the most, / are the most valuable damage items you could throw into this build? I threw BT, the best item of the damage items you could buy, to incorporate into this build. Maybe instead of your 4th or 5th item, if you really want to get something else, I would highly recommend BT as like the best option to replace one of these items with. Or you can buy it as a 6th item, because again, with the crit build, you don't need boots. You can sell them or never even finish your boots, and you can get a 6th item. I think BT would be one of the best ones you could get. This arrow, this shield with the plus sign, these are defensive items. The leftmost is Death's Dance here. I think Death's Dance would be the best defensive type item you could get to, throw in the build somewhere. You could throw that in 4th, 5th, or 6th, and I think that would also be very, very strong. So basically, if you're going to do this build any other way besides what is on the screen here, Bork, LDR, IE, PD, Navori, then I would recommend you put in, BT or DD somewhere. Rage Blade actually is something you could potentially throw in here as well. It's a little bit more spicy and controversial. For the most part, I really think BT and DD are the only real viable, I shouldn't say viable, but like they're definitely the strongest alternatives of all the items in this section. And I have some little notes here to explain when to build certain items and why I think an item is good. And I have a column here where I explain, generally when you want to run the crit build versus a different build, or when you want to run this Ionian on-hit build versus other builds. This column will have a mini explanation explaining when I think the build is good / why it makes sense in a certain game. All right, and then last but not least, don't buy Zephyr. I think as of making this video, Zephyr's, I think, one of the worst items in the game, just my opinion. It's like super, super not cost effective, especially because we have things like PD, Navori in the game. The only reason you would buy Zephyr is if you really want to keep the movement speed from Berserker Greaves. Yeah, I mean, PD gives 12% movement speed. Navori gives 7%. Like, those items already replace the movement speed from Berserkers and give way more than Zephyr does. So just in general, I think you shouldn't buy Zephyr. You should replace it. Like, you should just buy PD 6th. And this applies to any build, not just crit. If there's ever a game where you're like on 5 items and you have Berserker Greaves and you're thinking about should I upgrade to Zephyr, just don't. Unless it's like you have 2,000 gold and it's going to be the last fight of the game. Sure, better to upgrade to Zephyr than just sit on Zerkers. But if you can afford, like if you can wait, it's always better to get PD instead of Zephyr. Just sell your boots and get PD 6th or Navori. I think that about covers it. I'm not going to explain each of these other builds right now. I think some of them are somewhat self-explanatory. This is just classic on-hit build. I put it in the strong category because I think it's strong, but maybe not quite as OP as crit is. These are builds I think are viable, and a lot of these are, like, as of making this video right now, they tend to be some of these more tanky, bruiseries type builds, usually starting with Bork and the Hex Plate. There's, I think, a heavy tank variation called Juggernaut. This build will be like Bork and Titanic into basically all tank items. In general, I'm someone who's always been a fan of tanky, so I'm always trying to figure out playstyle that I think work. I always have like a tanky build in my spreadsheet. As long as there's a viable version of it. And this is what I think it would look like. You're locking in Mastery because you're a Mastery 1 trick, but the enemy team is just super, super horrible for Yi to face. They have like Vayne, Alistar, Tryndamere, what else is just horrible for Jax? I don't know. They just have like Akali. All these champs that Yi hates to face, but you're a Mastery 1 trick. You're going to lock in Yi. You need to make it work, right? Those are the kind of games where I feel like a build like this is something that I at least personally like to have in my back pocket, especially if I have other carries on my team that I can count on to do damage, which is a controversial statement. I know in general it's not a good idea to rely on your teammates in solo queue to do damage for you, to carry. If the situation comes where like I feel like I can count on my team to do damage, builds like this have worked really well for me in the past. There are a lot of asterisks in there, okay, of like be careful about these kind of builds. That's why these are just in the viable section, not necessarily I recommend them super strongly. There you go. They're there, and you can try them and let me know what your thoughts are. Also, I always welcome feedback on any of these builds. I really appreciate when people try them for me, especially if you're like Emerald, Diamond, or higher elo. Like if you try these builds out and let me know your thoughts. Ideally, not just like, don't just play it like 1 or 2 games. You can put a few games in it and really try your best to make the build work and give me feedback. I really appreciate that kind of thing, and I will take what you say into account. Like I said before, I'm constantly updating the spreadsheet based on like data I'm taking in from all sources. Even if you don't have to be a challenger player, rank 1 Yi, for me to value what you're gonna say. I will consider what people tell me. Wait, one more thing I'll say is that there's a section at the bottom here that says needs testing. These are builds that I by no means recommend. They're just like ideas that I think are, maybe I've heard of them, but I don't know if they're good yet, or I haven't thought about them much yet. Or maybe it's just something I like just concocted in my head and I'm like, oh, that sounds like a fun idea. Let me just throw it in there. Again, by no means do I endorse these builds or think like if you do these builds in solo queue, they're at your own risk. I cannot vouch for their success. It's just ideas that need more testing. That is about it. Thank you so much for watching. It was kind of a longer YouTube video, as a lot of my build guide videos tend to be this way. And combined with the intro, I was just blah 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 talking for a long time. Thank you so much for your attention. If you watched until the end, you can find me at twitch.tv/wujusenshi. I also have a Twitter at wujusenshi. Let's see, I have a Discord. The link for that is in the YouTube description below. Hopefully I'll catch you around or stream or see you in the YouTube comments. Take care everyone. I'll see you later.